Fishing on big, natural, vast venues like this one behind me is never easy. It's even more challenging when you've never been here before and you've got virtually no information about how to approach it. So that's what this video is all about. Approaching a new venue, targeting truly wild fish on big venues, and all those little tips and tricks that are needed to put more fish in your net. This video is all about taking me out of my comfort zone to a new venue where I'm going to have to think fast, make loads of changes and adapt to what the fish are telling me. Might have to change lines, might have to change distances, might have to change baits, but all of those things are the unknown and we're going to find out exactly how it pans out. I think having preconceived ideas about a new venue like this, it's almost a little bit dangerous. I think the best way to treat it is open mind, see what happens, see what plays out in front of you, and see where the fish want to be. Location is key on this type of venue, and I think that's the way I need to play it. My first impression is it's a big water. The fish could literally be anywhere, but I know from experience this type of venue, particularly Ireland, and that's what I've got to compare this to, that until I plumb up, I don't really know what's going to happen. One of the most important things, if not the most important, when you come to a new venue is plumbing up. Now, I don't really know what to expect here, but what I can sort of tell by looking at the contours of the banks around me, they're quite steep. It looks like it's going to be quite deep. Now, on big waters like this, what you tend to find is species of fish are very depth specific. So if you've got a lot of depth variation, you know, in Ireland's a great example of that, what you tend to find is the bigger fish will always be in deeper water, the smaller fish are in shallower water, which obviously makes sense. But there's also points whereby it gets too deep. And when I say it gets too deep, I don't mean no fish can live out there, but also what I do mean is you can't catch fish on the bottom there. So I'm going to have a quick plumb up because literally I've got no idea what's going to be in front of me. I've got a 1.1 ounce bomb in front of me on at the minute. I'm just going to give it a shortish lob. It's probably like 30 metres, then count it down. So it's 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6. So that's a 6, which I reckon, obviously this comes with experience. There is no formula, as far as I'm concerned, which tells you exactly where you can say a 6 count on a 1 ounce is 18 foot. It doesn't work like that. I'd say a 6 there is probably around 15 foot. What I'm going to do is just give it a slow drag just to feel what the bottom's like. I'm on braid direct. I've got a braided leader, but obviously I'll talk to you about that properly, just to see what's out there. See, that's quite rocky. I can feel it just bouncing over rocks. A bit of fine stone there. Quite aggressive stone there. So already I can sort of tell the bottom's probably exactly what's around me, as in stones. So I'm just going to drop it a little bit shorter, just to see. So drop it sort of, what's that, 20 metres max? 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5. So that's a 5. So that's in roughly 10 metres, that count has changed 1. So it's not actually that steep, but a 5 at 20 metres is steep, as in it's quite an aggressive slope close to me. So that's quite smooth there. But in my head, so there's the stone. I reckon the stone starts, the proper aggressive, like bigger stones start at about 15 metres. So I'm already sort of forming a little map in my peg of what I've got in front of me. It's got a bit further. It's probably, I don't know, 40 metres. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. So that's an 8. So I've got another 10 metres and got another 2. So again, that's quite a slope. But that's quite smooth bottom, that is. That's the smoothest. It feels like the bottom's a little bit softer there. What I'll do is when I'm happy with a distance, as in I feel like the depth's right, I'm going to chuck a little bit further next cast. When I feel like the depth's right, I'll put a heavier bomb on, just so I've got a bit more feel. Braid, obviously, zero stretch. It accentuates what's on the bottom, so I get more feeling. So let's go a bit further still. So I reckon that's like 55, 60, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000. So that's a 9, so it's pretty slow. So straight away, my impressions are basically sort of 10 to 20 metres, it's like that, going away fast, quite rocky. So like, for me, fishing like a short line, which I sort of had an idea that I might be able to split the lines and maybe have 2 swims, maybe a short line for roach and a longer line for bream skimmers. It's not going to be possible due to what I've got in front of me. When it comes to counting the bomb down, I like to do it in seconds, but it's very difficult to count in seconds. So the way to do it, so you can also sink if you're fishing with other anglers, is to count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So adding that 1,000 on just slows your count down. So you're roughly counting at a second at a time, which just gives you a little bit more accuracy in terms of reading. And like I said, if you're fishing in a team or on a set venue where you're all counting your bomb down, you're all on the same wavelength. Once I've found a nice distance, then I'll use the sticks. When I say sticks, I mean measuring sticks, just to ascertain exactly how far out I am. But it's dangerous on these sort of waters to come with a preconceived idea of exactly where you're going to fish, because I'd imagine every swim plums up a little bit different. When coming to a new venue like this, I do like to find out information, so I'll ask some questions, find out little bits and bobs, but I adapt. I don't take someone else's word as gospel, so I'll take what they tell me. I'm a massive believer in that fish are fish, particularly wild fish. They're very aggressive, they like to feed, so there's multiple ways you can catch them. So I'll take the information, but then adapt it to suit how I want to fish. So I've just put 1.5 ounces on now, just to give me more feel. So when I drag that, so that's really nice, really smooth. Odd rock now, but I've got like 2-3 metres. And the other thing I'd say is, I reckon, we'll stick it in a second, but when we stick it up, I'm a good, probably 15, bit of a rock there, 15, 20 metres, some more aggressive rock. So I wouldn't want to be fishing on that. I'm a good 15, 20 metres away from that sort of steeper slope. So when I do hook a fish or I'm winding in, I've got plenty of time to get that feeder up and over any sort of rock that's going to potentially snag me up with a feeder or blunt my hook. So like when you're on a big wild water, the fish definitely hug contours. It's like I'd imagine, if this is anything like most of the waters I've fished, the fish will hug the contours of the ledge. So like they'll be sort of anywhere from sort of 20, on this swim, they'll be from 25 to sort of 50 metres out, purely because they like structure to hug. So you wouldn't gain anything by fishing right out in the middle. In terms of ground bait choice, the fashion now is like pellet, fish meal based mixes, but I see no evidence that this venue's been carp fished, so the fish aren't necessarily going to know what pellets are, what fish meal ground baits are. So for me, the safe option, sweet cereal based traditional type mix, that it's just safe. I know it's going to produce bites and it can't be wrong. Ground bait colour's an interesting one because a lot of people think clear water, the mix needs to be really dark because obviously the fish feel safe from predators over a dark mix. But I'm always a big believer. I like to take the edge off the colour, but I want that ground bait to be visible. Fish on this sort of venue, they're sight feeders. So I don't want my ground bait neon yellow, but equally I don't want it black. I want it that nice in-between colour so they can see it and also home in on it. On the bait front, I've gone very what I'd call natural. So we've got casters, dead maggots, live maggots, chopped worms and sweet corn. All traditional bream baits, which I feel like the fish in here will have seen, so that they're safe options. And although I'm not a safe angler, I can still be attacking with those baits. Well, we've found our spot. I've used the measuring sticks now, so I was a little bit out in my estimation. It's 35 metres, not 40. 35 metres is my 8 count. Nice flat bottom, doesn't feel too rocky, feels softish, but just nice and smooth. That's what I'm looking for. And also I was far enough away from that initial steep slope to be confident when I do hook a fish, I'm going to be able to get it up and over the slope. So the next question you're faced with, well I'm faced with today, is how do I start? Now, I know the dominant species in this lake are bream, skimmers, roach, perch, but it's deep. So on a normal bream venue, somewhere like Ferry Meadows, which is like 8 foot deep, I'd be thinking I'm going to put 10 to 15 bait ups in and then fish sort of patiently over the top of a big bed of bait. But this is 20 foot plus deep. And I've always believed, And I'm sort of comparing it to my experience in Ireland. When it's deep, a big volume of bait on the bottom, it's pretty much dead. It's not got any pulling power. The fish, I believe, are swimming around off bottom, maybe half depth, slightly lower, looking for something visual to home in on. So rather than putting a big bed of bait in at the start and then just sitting there trying to be patient, what I'm going to do is put less bait in at the start. So I'm going to put 4 8-hole exchanges in 40 gram, and then I'm going to try and be really busy and drag some fish into the swim by being aggressive with my fishing, because I feel like that's what it's about, dragging fish in. So literally going to put 4 bait ups in, big pinch of choppy, a few casters, a bit of mushed up corn. Mushed up corn, well, it's not mushed up, it's like zippered, so it's like chopped. It's really good on venues like this because the water's really clear, and I honestly believe the fish feed visually more than anything. So anything visual, like colour-wise, that they can home in on is going to be good. So I'm going to put 4 feeders in, the 8 holes, 40 gram, it's heavy enough to get down. So hit the clip, obviously pointing at it, and I'm going to let it hit the bottom. There's a fashion in recent years, and I do it a lot, particularly, like I say, on shallow bream waters, is to empty a lot of your bait on the surface. The reason being, you get a much better spread of bait if you empty it on the surface. You've got loads of cloud to pull fish into. But on a venue like this, which is 20 foot plus deep, if I empty bait on the surface, I can't be sure where it's going to end up. But, all right, today we've got no wind, flat calm, there's probably going to be no tow. But a bit of wind, bit of tow, that bait could be going 5 metres left, even further, it could be going to the right. So I'd rather get all the bait where I want it. So that feeder's hit the bottom now. To empty it, all I do is wind so I'm nice and tight, and then bring the rod back, several quick jerks, and I can feel that feeder emptying. Baiting up is a massive part of feeder fishing, and in the good old days, as some like to call it, I'd just put a big bait up feeder on my normal fishing rod and use that. But I'd have struggled to get the distance, you can't empty the feeder clean enough. So now we've got purpose-built tools for the job. So I've got a 12-foot exchange bait up rod, loads of power for whacking out big feeders full of bait, heavy feeders, but not only loads of power in the butt, but also really fast tip speed. That's mega important when baiting up, because I want that feeder to hit the bottom or even hit the surface, depending on how I'm putting the bait in, and get that really clean release. If the tip's too soft on your bait up rod, you're dragging bait all over the place, and then you fish over a much bigger area, which in turn makes them harder to catch. So rod choice, really important. Power in the butt, fast tip speed. Then reel, you want one with loads of cranking power, mini big pit style reel, so loads of power for winding in big heavy feeders. And then on the reel itself, I've got 016 exchange bait up braid. It's a braid purposely made, very hard wearing, for baiting up. It's orange as well, so you can see it in the water, nice and high vis, just really easy to use and lasts forever. That's really, really important and extremely durable. Baiting up takes it out of your kit. You know what I mean? If you're gonna ever have breakages, most of the breakages I see are on people's bait up because they haven't got the right kit for the job. So 016 exchange bait up braid, then really simple. All I've got is a heavy duty snap link, just tied it on a loop, and then I've got an 8-hole exchange bait up feeder. The beauty of the exchange system is on these big wild waters, the wind can get up. So 40 gram when it's flat calm for chucking sort of 35 to 50 meters is perfect. But if the wind gets up and all of a sudden I think I'm struggling or want to get the feeder down quicker, with the exchange system, I can literally put a 50 gram weight on, clip it into place and just adapt to the conditions. So a really versatile system. Something else which I love about the bait up feeders is the tapered design. So narrow at the front, wide at the back, it means they empty really cleanly. So when that feeder hits the bottom and I give it a quick couple of jerks to empty it, I can actually feel the bait. Because braid's got no stretch, I can actually feel the bait release. I'm getting a really clean release and that bait's landing exactly where I want it to. So when I put this second one in, I'm going to count it down, which you might be thinking, why is he doing that? So I'm just going to go 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, 11,000, 12,000. So it's pretty much a 12,000, so 12-second count. Bear in mind the feeder sinks slower just because of its shape, etc. So I empty that again on the bottom. What I'm going to do with the next one is use that 12 count to my advantage. I've just said I don't want to be releasing bait on the surface because I don't know where it's going to end up. But I don't mind releasing bait in that bottom sort of third because that's where I want the fish to be. So what I'm going to do on this feeder, a few dead maggots in this one, I haven't put any worms in. Again, plug it fairly loose. So I'll let this one hit. And then it's literally 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000. On 9, just emptied that. So I probably emptied it, I don't know, 6, 7 foot above the bottom. So there's a nice big cloud, but it's in that lower third of the water where I want the fish to be, where I can actually catch them. Something that massively helps on big natural waters is bait. The more bait goes in, the more the fish are tuned into it. So there was a match yesterday, which I actually think is an advantage because bait's gone in on all these pegs. So those fish are going to be switched on. They've seen some bait, they're going to be hungry, and they're going to be looking for it. There's always that little bit of added excitement with the first cast on a venue you've never been to because you don't know whether you're fishing in the right place, you don't know whether your idea about species is correct. So there's a lot of unknowns, and the first cast can actually dictate the whole day. I don't believe the fish are going to be line shy. They're wild fish to all intents and purposes. They're on the move all the time looking for food. I'd imagine they'll be quite aggressive. Meter hook length, because as I've said, I believe the fish are going to be off bottom. So I'm looking for them to chase the hook bait down. I've got a free hole 40 gram exchange on. Let it hit. Again, great feeder for making that fish attracting noise. If you notice, what I'm doing is pointing the rod straight at the feeder while it's sinking. The reason for that is I want to get tight really quick. So that feeder's it's hit bottom and I can literally sweep it round and I'm picking up like a metre plus of line straight away. I think that's a bite. No, not like an indication straight away. But I don't mind that because it gets me in and out. Definitely look like a small fish indication. Let's just check the hook bait. 3 maggots is a big hook bait, but again, I'm looking for a decent stamp of fish. Got some casters, corn. Gonna be quite aggressive with the loose offerings, just for these first 4 or 5 casts, until I get a feel for what's out there. Before I had that indication, again, hit that clip, pointing the rod straight down the line. So I'm pointing it virtually straight at the feeder. As soon as I feel that feeder hit the bottom, which is any second now, sweep the rod back. So I'm getting that first metre straight back. That's an indication. I'm trying to be a bit more patient this time. I reckon that's on. It is. I reckon that's a roach. Which is surprising because I wasn't convinced. Because of the depth I've gone into, like the 8, I wasn't sure whether I'd only catch skimmers and bream there. So it might be that I found the depth. Could be a perch actually. I found a depth. It's not going to be a skimmer after all. Oh, it is a skimmer. Thought I was going to say I found a depth whereby, oh, that's a great start. My mentality with this type of fishing is to be positive. I like to attack venues, and that is one thing I love about sort of truly wild venues and wild fish is you can attack it. They respond to a really positive approach, and that's one reason I love this type of venue. That's what I mean though as well, that response is how quick fish on these waters respond to bait and noise. Sounds daft because everyone thinks wild fish, you've got to be really quiet. But in actual fact, wild fish are hungry fish. They're always on the move looking for food. So literally pointing the rod down the line. Hopefully I'll do a better job with this one. As soon as it hits bottom like so, bring it round. And it's a case of getting tight while obviously reading the tip at the same time. No indication yet this chuck. I'd expect bites to be pretty much instant with fish chasing that feeder and chasing the hook bait down. Literally sort of thinking 90-second chucks to start with. Keeping busy, getting that column of bait going through the water. Oh, pretty sure that was a liner then, if you saw that with me. It took all my self-restraint not to pick up, but a great sign. It says straight away that those fish are coming to bait, and I didn't need to put a large volume straight in. Just give it another sort of 30 seconds. Obviously that meter hook length, I will tweak that depending on what sort of response I got, but at the minute I'm trying to fish through the water. Knowing what feeder to start on realistically comes with experience, but there's a general rule for me is, at the start I'm looking to pull fish. So it's always going to be a cage type feeder to start with because I want to pull fish into my swim. Once I've got fish into my swim, then I'll chop and change my feeder size to get the result that I want. Always takes a while to find your rhythm. Just clip one then on the way down. So there's fish already sort of in that column of water. On the bottom now. See what I mean for an instant bite? I'm guessing that's a skimmer again. But seeing as I got it wrong last time. That's the importance also of the long hook length. Could be a big roach. That's the beauty, I haven't got a clue. Because I don't know 100% I know what's in here, but I don't know what size everything is. Oh, it's a cracking roach. Probably like 8-10 ounces. 8 ounce, but an absolutely beautiful fish. What I would expect as well, if I do catch some roach, that they'll be good stamp because of the depth I'm fishing in. Like I said earlier, shallower water always tends to be, when there's a depth variation, the shallower water tends to be a smaller stamp of fish. So I'm hoping the depth I've chosen, bear in mind I hadn't got much deeper water, even a lot further out, will give me the best of maybe less roach, but bigger stamp roach. Hit the watch again. But that's how quick I'd expect the bites to hit a fish again then. There's a lot of fish, obviously, because I'm on my own as well, I'm pulling fish from all over by being busy. What I would say, even if I hadn't had an early response, I'd still be doing the same, keeping busy. I'm waiting for that, I had an indication then, but I'm waiting for something a bit more positive. Oh, see that there? That's on. That could be a skimmer or even, like, that's definitely something a bit bigger. If you notice then, like I could have picked up a second earlier, but I wanted to make sure I was picking up at the right indication and the fish was going to be on. I reckon this is a skimmer. The temptation is always to pick up at the first indication, but I can't stress how important it is to be that little bit patient, particularly with wild fish, because they're so aggressive. See if we can keep this one on. I don't know if you call that a bream or, well, that's a big skimmer. Depends where you're from. What's that? £1.5. Literally solid, like a really muscular feeling fish. Yeah, £1.5, popper light. Sort of a different shape and a more powerful fish when they're in the wild, I think, because they have to be powerful and strong to survive. So we're just going to keep doing now. There's obviously I'm obviously pulling a lot of fish, so I'm going to be really aggressive with the loose offerings. Because although I'm pulling them, I've got to keep them there as well. But like I said, if it hadn't been such a good start, I'd still keep busy. There's nothing on this sort of venue for, like, if you weren't catching, there's no point putting a tiny feeder in on and trying to rein everything in. It's not that type of fishing. You're still better to be aggressive, chop and change what you feed in. I might feed less particles if I wasn't catching, but still be in and out, get that cloud going. Trying to pull some fish into the swim. Literally, it's instant. I'm trying to be. Yeah, that's on. I reckon that's. Could be a big roach, or it could be a small skimmer. But it's, considering when you look at the size of the venue, it's ridiculous fishing. It could even be a perch. Could be anything. No, I don't think it's a perch because it's not flaring its gills. Let's have a look. I think it's a big roach. Yeah, clonking roach. Beautiful fish. Because the water's clear as well, they've got amazing colours. Right, so that's another 6-8 ounce. But I believe if I was fishing in shallower water, maybe if I'd fished 20 metres, which would have been difficult here because of the rocks, I'd probably catch a much smaller stamper roach. So just going to keep doing what I'm doing at the minute, because there's no need not to. There's no need to change my feeder type because everything's clean. If it starts getting messy, as in maybe I start missing some bites or feel like the fish are unsettled, I might switch to a window just to try and pin them to the bottom a bit more. But at the minute, everything's good, as in I'm getting nice clean bites. But as I said, it's just when you get a lot of fish in your swim, which there already is to a degree, just being that bit patient on the bite. You just imagine they're chasing those 3 maggots down. There's the first indication. Because I've got 3 on as well, it's pretty much, it's quite a tough bait, as in they're not going to smash all 3 maggots. So you can wait, like they were, oh, I was just about to pick up on that. Noticeable if you bite, your best chance is literally as soon as you're tightening up rather than once you're tight. Bait on the bottom on this type of venue hasn't got a lot of pulling power. Indication. I'm already thinking I could perhaps shorten this hook length in a chuck or 2. So that was a proper bite. This is another big skimmer, I'd say. But again, the important, wait for that proper bite. If you're not careful on this, you can get a lot of fish in your swim and be a busy fall. If it was a little bit bigger, this one, definitely a few more head shakes. But I'm on braid direct, so well, I've got 008 Pulse 8 reel line and then an 022 braided leader. Let's have a look. Yeah, like peas in a pod, I'd say. Maybe a little bit bigger, that one. Yeah, a tiny bit bigger. No, probably roughly the same. Roughly the same size. Only lip hook, that one as well. Say like, it's got to be £2. They feel, sounds daft to say it, but they feel heavy as well. Sometimes you pick up Bream and skimmers and you think, oh, they're a bit lighter than what I thought they were going to be. Feeder rod choice for this type of fishing depends on the distance you're going to be fishing. Today I'm fishing 35 metres, so my rod choice is an Aventus 12-foot Steve ringer, obviously designed by myself. Very soft tip action, but a bit of power in the butt, because the conditions can change really quickly on venues like this, so I need power. So this rod for me is perfectly suited to sort of fast fishing at distances from 30 to sort of 65, 70 metres, with feeders anything from literally 20 gram up to 50, 60 gram maximum. That's what this rod's comfortable with. Things I love about it, when I'm fishing fast, comfort is key. It's got a TVS handle. It's the most comfortable handle I've ever used. This might sound like, it sounds daft, but it makes a big difference. When you're holding the rod all day, it needs to feel comfortable in the hand. And that's where a TVS handle, for me, is a massive standout. I'm not butt resting it. I'm fishing fast, fishing aggressive. I just want everything to sort of be as one, and that handle helps massively with that. Real choice, we're using heavy feeders, we're bringing them up from deep water. We need something with a bit of cranking power. So we've got an Engage Pro 6000. It's basically like a mini big pit reel. Super slow oscillation, just great for winding in big feeders, never feels like it's struggling. The reel itself, loaded with 008 Pulse 8 braid. Braid is everything on big natural waters. I want to make casting easy, braid does that. I want to see bites easier, braid achieves that because of zero stretch. If I want to move the feeders and give it a twitch, braid makes it easier again because everything's so direct. And then I've got a shot leader of Pulse 9 022. Leader length I will vary depending on the terrain. Like if it's a little bit rocky, but as a guide, I measure my leader length in arm's lengths, but obviously everyone's arm's length are different. So as a guide, when I'm in the casting position, as in like the feeders in the casting position, I want 4 to 6 turns. That's a general leader length of the braid on the reel. There's a couple of advantages to a shot leader. Firstly, when I'm casting, it means I'm always casting off the heavier braid, which means chances of a breakage are reduced. Also, Pulse 9, the leader material, is very, very hard wearing, abrasion resistance. So if there's any zebra mussels, that sort of thing out there, it's less likely to get damaged than the 008 Pulse 8 on the reel is. So it's just reducing the chances of a breakage. But also when I'm playing fish, that leader knot is a great locator. So when I hear my leader knot hit the tip ring, it's literally 4 to 6 turns on the reel and that fish is in netting position. So it's a great way of knowing where the fish is when you're playing it. Before I move on to the business end, quiver tip, 1.5 ounces, slightly oversized guides on the tip, again, to make that shot leader knot literally fly through the rings. And then my setup is really, really simple. Super fine feeder link, so it's a free running rig. I honestly feel there is nothing to touch this rig in terms of bite detection, hitting bites, playing fish. I don't think it can be beaten. So super fine feeder link, which is a braided link. The beauty of it is it never ever tangles. It collapses on the cast and it means you're totally direct to the fish. You're more direct with the bite. The fish hasn't got to pick the weight of the feeder up when you get a bite. Everything's nice and direct. And obviously if you do suffer a breakage as well, it's a totally free setup. So super fine feeder link. Then I've got 22 centimeters of 022 pure fluorocarbon as my boom, single strand, and I tie that in with a 4-turn water knot. Again, trim knots, the knot's tight, and my little diamond eye there, it rests against the knot, so I'm casting off that knot. So really neat, really simple, really efficient, and nothing to tangle. So I've got my 22 centimeters of 022 pure, little overhand loop in the end of the pure fluorocarbon, and that's where I attach my hook length, obviously via the loop-to-loop method. So really simple, but really lightweight, so there's hardly any resistance. So when a fish picks up the hook bait, it feels basically very little. Bites are really smooth with this setup. If you alternate between this setup and maybe a helicopter, the difference in bites is incredible. So much smoother, this rig's so much more direct, and I'm 100% confident that it results in more fish in the net. So that's your boom, 022, 22 centimeters. So lastly, hook choice, size 12 pole special, sometimes a 10, depending on what baits I'm fishing. What I love about the pole special, it's a big hook. Like I said, these fish are not hook or line shy, but the pole special has an extra long point, so it's perfect for natural baits like worms, bunches of maggots, anything like that. And what it does, it reduces the chances of the maggot or the worm going over the hook point itself, something which can be a real problem when fishing bunches of red worms, 3 or 4 dead maggots, 3 live maggots. It's nothing worse getting a bite, feeling that kick, fish coming off, maggots gone over the point. That just doesn't happen with a pole special. And on top of that, they've got an extremely durable point, which is really important when catching large numbers of fish, which is what this type of venue is all about. As a guide on this type of venue, I'm a big believer, start with a long hook length, so you've got that bait falling through the water, and then vary it depending on what the fish are telling you. So you need to have hook lengths tied up or be prepared to shorten your long hook lengths so you can follow those fish and follow their behaviour throughout the session. Things have slowed up a little bit. There's still fish there though, but I feel like the meter hook length is too long. So what I'm going to do is cut this one off. Could cut it down, but I've actually got some shorter hook lengths tied up. So sticking with the 12 pole special, 016 pure. Just going to drop it down to 65 just to see if that makes a difference. It might not, it might get worse. But if you don't try these things, you don't know. It might be I can come even shorter still. But we'll drop down to 65 first. Because it's really obvious there's fish round the feeder. Still getting little pulls and knocks, just not quite as many bites. I haven't seen the need to change hook bait, although I might do if I go 2 or 3 chucks. Might try a bunch of dead maggots. Might try a couple of red worms. Obviously red worms are a fantastic skimmer bait. Casters, chopped corn. Not feeding so much worm at the minute. I don't feel like I need to be feeding loads and loads of worms. I feel like they're more particle fish. Sending the feeder up quite high as well. The reason being, again, to get that nice bit of noise when the feeder hits the surface. Oh. So there is. Has that hit bottom yet? I hit I hit a fish then. It might be I've got fish at all levels. Yeah, I've gone across the back of a fish then. A lot of fish suddenly coming up off bottom. I have one more chuck on this 65 with this feeder. I never felt like that actually got to the bottom, like it went over the back of a fish. It sounds ridiculous on such a big, wild expanse of water. But if I don't get it, if it's not clean again this chuck, what I'll do is I'm going to put a large window on, because the beauty of a window is it releases less on the way down, sinks quicker as well, so I can be a little bit more efficient. Let's just see, because literally I'm starting to clip quite a lot of fish. When I say clip, as that feeder's going down now, the tip's just going, it's just doing it now. Just hit one then. And they're quite a long way off bottom, some of them. Right, so we've got the slide 60, we're down this time, we haven't gone across. But I'm already thinking that window might need to come out, just to try and control the peg a little bit better, or indications. There's plenty of fish there. But I might just need to, like, it might be a case of I need to get into maybe 2 or 3 chucks on the exchange, 4 or 5 chucks on the window. I've always had this saying, cage to attract them and window to catch them. And that's often very much the case in deep water. You have to set it up with a cage, get the fish in your swim, and then switch to a window to try and actually catch the fish. So I've had, what, 4 or 5 indications this cast and no bite. So if I don't get a bite, this chuck, I'm going to switch it to, I'm going to have a go on the window, just to try and get them. Oh, that's an indication. So it would have been easy to get them to pick up on that. It's a real art in terms of like making sure you're reading your bites, particularly when you're holding the rod. But when I'm fishing fast, I prefer holding the rod rather than sort of butt resting it and just sitting there. This type of fishing isn't for me about just sitting it in a butt rest and waiting for something to happen. So I've had another indication, like little tiny liners, which is classic skimmers. That's what I'm going to do. We've got a 40 gram large. I'm going to go. I don't fish the solid windows lots, but I'm going to put a solid one on just to get it down. One of the things a lot of anglers don't do is chop and change their feeders, but there's a reason behind it. What I'm trying to do is vary my presentation. So I've always had this saying, cage feeder to attract them, because the cage gives off lots of attraction, window to catch them, because the window pins the fish. So chopping and changing feeders allows me to vary how the bait's coming out. So when there's not a lot of fish in the swim, I might switch to the cage, get lots of attraction, but when I feel the swim's built up, I switch to the window to try and pin them to the bottom where I want them to be, so they're easier to catch. Clip the exchange off. Solid window, just scoop it through, like so. Just going to neaten it off a little bit as well, so there's not loads of bait coming out on the way down. See if I feel, might take a couple of chucks just to settle it down. See, look, that hit a fish then. Sounds ridiculous, but having too many fish in your swim can create problems. But then it's a case of trying to sort it out. So that window's down that little bit quicker. Beauty of a window, I don't think it empties much bait at all until I go to reel it in. I've gone with a solid window purely, well, it's not solid, it has got an odd hole, but purely to get the bulk of the bait down to the bottom. Because like at the minute, it feels like the fish want to be high. Skimmers are the most scatty fish, so when you get them in your swim, catching them can be really frustrating, because they're what I call flighty, so they're moving around all over the place. They don't settle like big bream. Didn't actually have a bite then, which again makes me think, if that's in the mouth, I could probably come even shorter with a hook length. Because that fish has obviously been feeding, but it's feeding so confidently it's not actually swimming off. Feels like the sort of place there could be some like big hybrids or something. No, I foul locked it in the back. Which again is a sign, that's a sign to me is that I could shorten this hook length up. because that fish has been feeding round the feeder. When it comes to catching skimmers, one of my favourite baits is redworms. Probably the most traditional skimmer or bream bait of all. The beauty of redworms is they're small, they're very soft, wriggle loads, so they're very, very attractive. So if the skimmer's in your peg, there's rarely a better hook bait. I'm going to put 4 redworms on, just tip it with a dead red, just to stop them trying to wiggle off the point. Pole specials are beautiful, because they've got an extra long point. They're perfect for this type of hook bait. It's a nice wriggly bunch of redworms. See if that makes a difference. If this doesn't, then it's literally going to be shortening that hook length down even further. The indications are tiny, which I know I've said this before, is a real sign that they're round the feeder. If they were big liners pulling the rod in, that's a sign they're like unsettled, a bit spooky. But these fish are definitely round the feeder itself. Oh, see that then? So I think that's on, yeah. Obviously that's on a bunch of redworms. But again, I feel like the bite was a little bit slower than I'd want it to be. It was a nice fish though. Would have been easy again then to pick up too early. Whoa, big head shake. I reckon it's another sort of 2 pound fish. I should have picked out the redworms though. Maybe a little bit bigger, hard to see. Yeah, a little bit bigger, that one. Quite a dark fish. Only just nicked it as well. And that one's like probably the biggest one yet, 2.5 pound. They look quite young fish as well. Just clean that slime off. Something my dad taught me. Always clean, if you skim or bream fishing, always clean that slime off. Feeding more and more particles now. To load, just literally scooping the window through. Just smearing it. Just enough pressure, I'd say, to keep the bait in. But like I say, a window, from what I've seen on Gurus Underwater, when we filmed at Ferry, a window doesn't really release any bait. A tiny bit on the way down, but the bulk of it's coming out the feeder as you go to reel the feeder in. I've gone across a fish on the way. There's a lot of fish, literally, like right under the surface. The fishing's still good, but I don't feel I've quite got on top of it, as in the fish are a little bit scatty. So what I'm going to do is, there's still too many fish off bottom, so I'm going to pick the bait up rod again and just put 2, I might put 3 in, just to try and pin them back down to the bottom. I'm not sure whether they're off bottom because they want to be and they just don't want to drop, it's quite high pressure, or there's just not enough bait there to sort of pin them to the bottom. Like, I don't believe I should have fed more at the start because I had such a good response. But I'm going to let these 2, 3 literally hit the bottom. Just watching that braid, obviously, as it goes forward. As soon as it hits, 8 hole of exchange, just hit, nice and clean, and I can feel that feeder empty straight away. Just going to put a bit more worm in as well, see if that holds them to the bottom. Bit of scent, bit of smell, might pin them a little bit better. Gonna let it hit. Clipped a fish then with the bait up. It's ridiculous how many fish there seem to be out there. Clipped another one. It might just be that because I'm on my own, sounds daft, but I'm pulling too many fish. But there's a couple of other things we can perhaps do to help with that as well, but we'll see how this goes. So I'm going to put 3 in. Plugging it quite hard because I want it to get down. I want them fish on the bottom now. But it might just be it's difficult. The depth, etc. is going to make it difficult to pin them. I'm still on that window, but I might switch it back. So I clipped another one then, but right at the bottom. Put that down. Well, I'll first chuck on the window. I'm going to go back to, caught some on red worms, but I'm going to go back to maggots because that was as good as. So we'll put a bunch of deads on. I'll feed in some dead maggots. So I'm going to just put 4 deads on. Be interesting to see. If I just tried a single dead maggot. I always think when there's a lot of fish, big hook bait stand out. Give them something they can really home in on. A little bit of rain coming. That feeder's down. So picking that bait rod, something I do a lot, particularly with this style of fishing. Sometimes I do it to try and pull fish back into the swim. A lot of people think bait rod, just use it at the start. But you can use it just for putting a couple more in, maybe introducing a volume of worms if you want to do it with a big bait up window. So I've definitely quietened it. I'm going to give it a twitch. Bottom's lovely and smooth, like I felt with the bomb. So I'd love to say then that I saw a bite, but I didn't, which to me that's twice that's happened now, which is a classic sign of the hook length's too long. Could be just pure coincidence that I picked it up as it sucked it in, but I think everything now is screaming shorter hook length still. Bear in mind I've got, what, a 65 centimetre hook length on, plus my booms, 20 odd centimetres as well. So it's longer than you think. Nice fish. Well, that last fish was on the end, which for me, when I say on the end is, I can't even pretend I saw a bite, went to reel and it's on, which, that's screaming, and what with all the indications as well, that I need a shorter hook length. So I've put 20 centimetre hook length on, obviously plus my boom. So the hook's pretty much, it's probably 30 centimetres below the feeder. Yeah, 25, 30 centimetres below the feeder. Switch to a 5-hole exchange, still 40 gram. I feel like a bigger feeder makes sense as well, more aggressive. There's loads and loads of fish out there. And I'm catching, but I just feel like I should be catching better. So let's see if this makes a difference. I feel like it makes sense. Still a lot of fish up in the water. I just think that's the nature of the venue and the fact I'm on my own pulling fish from all over the place. So we've got that short hook length on, 20 centimetres plus the boom. It's a very aggressive rig, which means I should be able to be even more patient. I've got 3 dead reds on the hook. I might actually cut back the amount of particles, so I'm giving them less choice as well. Again, with this short hook length, it should literally be, when I get a bite, it should be very positive. Like that looks like it's on to me. I really want to pick up on, no, it stopped. Surely that's on, yeah. Not convinced that's hooked right, unless it's just wrapped up. It's strange. I know it looked an amazing bite, but it was a strange bite. fact it's kiting as well. There's no head nodding. It's come in quick. Just makes me think it's either wrapped up or not quite hooked where it should be. My gut instinct is it's not hooked where it should be, unless, like I say, unless it's, no, definitely not. Oh, it's hooked close. Nice fish. Well, the short hook length experiment, it hasn't worked. It made perfect sense, but the best length so far has been 1 metre, so I'm going back to where I started. 1 metre hook length. Still the 12 pole special. I don't believe they're line or hook shy. And somebody watching this might say, oh, I think they are, but I just don't think I've got it quite right in my feeding yet. I'm going to go back to 3 live maggots, because that was a great starting point. A few casters. Still going to keep the worms out for the minute. Just to see if it'd be really interesting now to see if I get that. I haven't had like any quick bites now for ages, as in like I had at the start as you're tightening up type bites. So it'd be really interesting to see if I get one now. Right, the feeder's just hit. So obviously got that 1 metre hook length on now, 3 live maggots. You might be watching thinking, I'm chopping and changing all the time. But that's what this style of, when you don't know a venue, you chop and change more because you're looking for the perfect, I'm looking for that right area where I think the fish are happy, and then also to get my feeding right. I'm learning constantly. It's really, I can't stress enough how difficult fishing a venue when you don't know anything about it is. Put 50 gram on in a minute just to get it down quicker, because the amount of fish that are hitting it on the way down, and they aren't skimmers, the skimmers are on the bottom, but I feel like they're knocking the hook bait off sometimes, which obviously isn't good. Whereas 50 gram would get down a bit quicker. A bit cleaner. Just putting a 50 on just to see if it does make a difference. I've just got one out there and put the lead on it, because it will sink. 50 gram will obviously sink faster and get that hook bait to the bottom past all these other fish, because it's these other fish that are creating a problem. It's like then I clip 3 or 4 on the way down. Well, I'm not even saying clip it, they might even be pulling at the hook bait, but they're knocking the hook bait off. So there's signs that the skimmer's there now. So 50 gram might just bomb it down a bit faster and stop them pulling at the bait. I'm having a real issue with the fish that are off bottom, which sounds ridiculous, but as the feeder's falling, I'm constantly clipping fish, they're nipping the hook bait off. So what I've done is, I've been fishing a 40 gram window. I need to get that bait down quicker, so I've switched to a 50. The reason being, it's going to get the hook bait down quicker and get it past those small fish that are in the upper layers to the bream and hopefully skimmers that are on the bottom, because I know they're there. But a lot of the time I'm just not fishing for them properly because of the fish that are up in the water. It looks like things are getting a little bit better. Obviously I caught what I had, one sort of £1.4, then I picked up on the wrong bite and then gone back in, been that little bit more patient. 4 dead reds, and we've got another one on which I'm confident is in the mouth. Pop a bite. Just trying to slow things down a little bit now. Get that bait to the bottom. The 50 gram definitely seems to work. I'm not getting my hook bait knocked off as much because it's falling that little bit quicker. Lovely fish. It's that size. Everywhere I've ever been when they're this sort of size, they're never as easy to catch as you think they should be. Well, I don't know, £2, 2 and a bit. But actually, probably for the first time since that first hour, which was quite steady, I feel like I'm making some progress now. I feel like I had my depth right at the start, just didn't have my feeding right, and I didn't take into account how many other fish were in here, like the amount of small fish. And I do believe this is an issue more because of the fact I'm sat on my own. As good as sitting on your own can be, today I feel like it's been a bit of an issue, as in I've attracted too many fish. Let's see if we can now start to get somewhere. The session has actually been a really interesting one and a steep learning curve. I came here thinking it was going to be really easy. I'd seen some pictures on the Facebook page, massive catches of bream, and you think bream pretty easy, big feeder, be aggressive, I'll catch one a cast. And it has been amazing fishing, I can't stress that. But what I've loved is the challenge. These fish don't hang themselves. You have to think fast, you have to adapt to how they're feeding. And that for me is what wild fishing is all about. And that's why I've loved this session so much. After some of the most frustrating fishing I've ever had, it's now turned out to be a really, really nice day. But it's not been simple. And I think a lot of that's been because I've got no idea about the venue. I didn't know the stamp of fish. I didn't know what depth they wanted to be in. But now I've settled into that really nice rhythm, using the big window, loads of particles, a bit more patient, heavier feeder. And it's pretty much been, for the last hour, one of these every single cast. But it shows also how small changes can make all the difference. You're so close to basically catching one of these every single cast, but the reality is you're a mile away. But I feel like I've worked really hard, gone through some really frustrating times, but come out the other side. Not saying I've mastered the venue, because you never master a venue first time, but finished on a real high. And when you're catching fish like these, which contrary to popular belief, I think I've proved today, are not easy to catch, but once you sort it out on a wild venue like this, there's something really satisfying from getting that bite, picking up, feeling that big head nod, and winding in a beautiful skimmer or a bream, depending on where you're from.